Because, I think it's an important question, especially when we talk about Western Balkans and Turkey. All those mini games of geopolitical shifts that we seem to be seeing, I think it's important to talk about EU's immediate neighborhood, not only through the enlargement paradigm, but also be aware of these geopolitical implications of the last year and a half.
Definitely so. And I was looking at this, just the table of contents. And you find here striking a balance between Russia and the West, EU-Russia dilemma, contest for the neighborhood, EU-Russia rivalry. And probably, if I go on, that's only in one page, the index. And indeed, there is a lot of, you say, mini games. And I think this is the definition of it. It's mini games in a bigger picture. And I think it is important for us to understand the mini games dynamic within the bigger picture and focus our attention and our work, for sure also in the mini games, but most of all in the bigger picture. And to me, the worrying thing or the bigger picture, and I don't go into the list of the worrying things in the mini games because that's very long, but the worrying thing in the bigger picture is that we are now getting used, even how do you say in English? Rassegnati. We're giving up.
Resigned.
Resigned, thanks. He speaks perfect Italian, so I profit from that. We are resigned to accept the fact that not only for the Western Balkans or for Turkey, but also for the European Union member states, it's a matter of choosing which side. Now, when it comes to European Union, we've been working well enough to keep unity. For 1.5 years, difficult choices. Bulgaria knows that very well. Other countries know that very well. We've built this unity, we're keeping this unity. But in the meantime, we resigned ourselves to the fact that this has become a confrontational thing. And this is not the nature of the relations we would like to develop. It can be Russia agenda. I have no doubt about that. But it is for sure not a European Union agenda to move to that zero-sum game. Because the nature of the relations we want to build in foreign policy, especially in our neighborhood, is not the zero-sum game. It's the win-win. This is the nature of the relations we have been working on for 60 years inside the European Union and in the neighborhood. Do we resign ourselves to the idea that this model of foreign policy, of foreign relations, is dead? I would not. Even if I understand very well that now it's not the best time for win-win situations, but still it's the European way. And we discussed that a few hours ago with Daniel. And there are some cases where we manage, through the European approach to foreign policy and diplomacy, to have some win-win situations and results, like the Iranian deal we got just 1 week ago, where Russia played a constructive role. So I think that apart from focusing on the mini games, which are very important because they are not mini, they are life of people and states and regions. I mean, it's all for some, so it's all for all of us. The bigger picture we have to deal with is the real choice we have to make is, do we resign ourselves to go back to the idea of spheres of influence and choosing the camp, or while we deal with the mini games, which are not mini, we try to rebuild the conditions for win-win situation models in foreign policy, which is the nature of European foreign policy. I think this is the strategic vision we have to rebuild, which is very difficult to rebuild, first of all internally, inside the European Union, because trust is gone, not among us, with some of our neighbors. And obviously Russia is the key, but it's an issue that goes far beyond Russia, and the whole issue of how we tackle our Eastern Partnership is at stake. Again, we are talking about countries, and in the Balkans, in the Western Balkans, very much so, where if we European Union ask for choosing the camp, we lose. Not because we're not we're not good enough to win the competition, but because we give up our nature. So it's already losing. Even if we win, even if countries will choose our camp, it will be a defeat anyway, because we will have accepted already the kind of game that we don't have to. And we see it dramatically in some Western Balkan countries that ask explicitly not to be forced to choose, because this would be unsustainable from a social point of view, from even a cultural point of view. And on the other side, moving east, for some of our Eastern partners, it's literally impossible to do it. So I think that the real point will be to see how we will manage to reconnect or rebuild conditions, not for now, not for 5 years from now probably, but the conditions for having a different kind of approach in foreign policy in our neighborhood.
Mrs. Kuneva, is it so difficult really to make a choice between Russia and the EU?
Well, not at all. But of course, it depends very much from your starting point, what you are striving for, what you like, how, what kind of mentality you'd like to share and you appreciate. Well, I think that we might stress on the things which we have in common. We might say about human rights, which are everywhere the same, or should be everywhere the same, and this is a value which we need to well, no, not even in a moment hesitation about this. I think that we can even talk about certain economic values, like free market, like competition, like equal level playing field, like environment and economy. I think that the more ground we could occupy with the things which we might share, then we need to expand this territory and building more and more. Well, obviously, one of the things which are in everybody's mind talking about these relations is energy policy. I believe that we need to build on something very concrete and to defend very strongly European interest. And also, this one will help to defend our own unity within the European Union, like our common energy market, like building infrastructure. Also, when we have cases in which to defend the interest of one country means a common action from all the countries. I remember the first row between Russia and Poland, and it was purely, almost, it seemed to be purely trade issue, but it turned not to be, of course. There is always something hidden and behind. There is nothing purely economic about trade. So I also share the view that we need to engage and work and never give up, because this is not in the culture of EU. We can't give up on building bridges. But we need to stress and to communicate more about what we achieve in the Union, and being this policy more, well, so to say, anthropocentric, to put every single man in the center of the efforts. That's why I started with human rights. I think that people are very, very receptive in Russia, and we need to count on them, that they're very receptive about European values, actually. And this is our big tool. I wouldn't say weapon, not to be misunderstood, but it is. I mean, this is a great tool for us.
Thanks a lot. We have 2 more questions that I would like to ask you in 13 minutes. So I think we will do it very quickly. My first question would be on migration. I know, Ms. Mogherini, that you were planning to visit a place for a center for refugees here in Sofia. I don't know if you did. But maybe we can talk a little bit about all this, the specter of the migrants from the south who are coming here, whom we on the one hand don't want, on the other hand we understand that these are people running away from war. This seems to be a very difficult dilemma for the EU. How do you think it should be resolved? What's the realistic scenario, probably?
First of all, the realistic scenario is, normally I'm so optimistic that I risk to be defined naive, but the realistic scenario here is that this is a phenomenon that is not only not going away anytime soon, but increasing in the future. That's very clear. Poverty, inequalities, climate change and natural disasters, wars, conflicts, massive violation of human rights in large parts of the world. All of this is not going to finish tomorrow morning, even if we work very hard for this to happen. And it is only natural that human beings decide, choose, and sometimes are forced to leave, risking all they have, including the life and life of their children, to find hope. This is in human nature. And we are fooling ourselves if we even think that this is something that can be contained or stopped anytime soon. It's not. And we are going to have to deal with this for years, if not decades, to come. So we better realize it, not deny it, and get ready for it. We are a bit late in getting ready for it. First of all, because so far, until now, until this year, I think, we refused to have a common European approach or vision or analysis or action on this. Imagining that single member states could face a phenomenon like this all alone, which is obviously not true. Here in Bulgaria, when it comes to the eastern route, in Italy when it comes to the Mediterranean route, in Spain, or tomorrow, who knows, in Poland or in Latvia. So we'd better understand that this is a European issue that is going to stay and that we will have to deal as Europeans all together, looking at all different directions altogether. And we have 4 different things we can do to manage this, or to start managing this in a reasonable way. First is the immediate. The immediate is obviously, and I know this is very much debated in Bulgaria and in other countries, especially in the Western Balkans, the borders and the routes. As it is, and it was debated across the Mediterranean, the borders and the routes, with the difference that the land border is there, the sea is there, but it's much more complicated, but also the land border is much complicated, especially when it's flat or when it's extended or when it's not possible to be secured. Mountains are also very difficult to check. So that is the most evident element on which we can work. Then we have the immediate other element attached to it, which is the criminal networks working on routes and borders. Because the links with international organized crime, with connections with all other kinds of trafficking in the Balkans, in the southern shore of the Mediterranean, being it arms, being it illicit traffics, being it money laundering, being it terrorism, is huge and has huge ramifications we have to tackle. On the Mediterranean side, we've started this operation, this naval operation, in 2 months, unanimously. It's working at the moment. In 3 days, it's going to reach the full capacity, and hopefully also going to move forward to the further steps, tackling the smugglers and traffickers network. Not only for the sake of the human lives we can save in this way, but also because facing the criminal organizations that are trafficking and smuggling people is also a way of preventing other kinds of crimes and instabilities. Again, with ramifications depending on the areas, with terrorism, with other forms of criminal organizations. The third element is what happens outside of our borders and a little bit further, a little bit beyond what we see. When I was in Italy, I was visiting several times refugee centers, Lampedusa, and the story you hear every time is don't focus that much, but apart from focusing that much on the trip at sea, look at what happens before. Look at what happens before we get to the shores of the Mediterranean. Look at all the way across the desert. Look at what happens in the countries of origin. All the way to the Mediterranean shores, there's 100 times more of drama and dramatic situations and people losing lives and abuses and terrible things. And a lot of money going into the circle of criminal organizations. So we have, and this is something we are finally developing as Europeans, to work with countries of origin, countries on transit, and international agencies like UNHCR and IOM to make sure that we don't only tackle the last part of the trip, but we move backwards to the root causes and to all the way of the trips of desperation. And this requires partnership, first of all with the African countries, with the African Union, and with Turkey, with our Asian partners, being it Pakistan, Afghanistan, and all the way. This is a huge, huge work to do. But we have to finally start doing it for serious, because it's a kind of work that doesn't pay off immediately, so no politician will ever invest too much in it because it doesn't pay off in the time of a mandate. But if you think of who will be sitting at our place in 10 years from now, if we don't do it now, they will have exactly the same problem multiplied by hundreds. Then there is another element which has to do also with credibility, which is, I think, a very important word, when it comes to what we do inside our borders. Here, this is not my institutional responsibility, but it's my political responsibility as I'm part of a collegial effort in the Commission and in the Council inside the European Union, which is, if it's a European problem, we have to tackle it in a European way when it comes to border control, when it comes to fighting traffickers, when it comes to cooperation with countries of origin and transit, when it comes to international dimension, and when it comes to sharing not the burden, I refuse to say burden referring to human beings, but the responsibility of welcoming people that are looking for a refugee status. It also means that we have to share the responsibility of sending back people that are economic migrants and have no rights to stay. But I think that here we still have to work a lot, because we've done a little bit of progress in sharing, but the frontline countries, like Bulgaria is, like other countries are, know very well that if we don't have a real system of sharing the welcoming of refugees, this is not sustainable for any of the member states. And this is going to destroy the sense of European solidarity. And once it can be Italy needing help, once can be Bulgaria needing help, once can be a Baltic country needing help. Another time can be Greece or Portugal or you don't know what. And the basic principle of a family is that you help each other because, first of all, because there is a relationship, so it's natural to help each other. Here, I'm afraid we still have to work a little bit. But also because you know that one day you might need the same. And so it's also an interest to help each other. It's not only out of good feelings. Here, I think we still need to work because the fact that we started sharing responsibility, but we're not really there yet, is also undermining our credibility outside. When we go, and I do, to Jordan, or to Turkey even, or to Lebanon, or to Morocco, and you argue for cooperation on managing the flows, and you have in front of you a minister that has to deal with 2 million refugees on their territory, and they know, and you know that they know, that we have been fighting for 1,000 more, 1,000 less, your credibility in terms of being the big European Union gets to zero. Gets to zero. So as strong as we manage to be internally, that reflects on our external capacity to build partnerships.
Thanks. That's a great moment to turn to Mrs. Kuneva, who is overseeing the migration issue in the Bulgarian government.
So just without any question, I really have
I think the question is how do you see this solidarity sharing?
Yeah, no, I understand you correctly, but I believe that all of us, we know the data. We know that the refugee flow increased 5 times if we compare with the last 3 years. We also know that 20% of the national budget, which is dedicated to the national security, is now dedicated to migration, which is not easy for us. I think that you've been quite clear about the importance of common European policy. I'm not going to repeat the Frontex, the different operations, the different struggles, until we arrive to what Commissioner Avramopoulos proposed last time, and I'm sure that you are fully aware that Bulgaria had taken obligation for the 500 more based on resettlement. For us, it's very important also from which country to resettle. Of course, our border with Turkey is, well, obviously, this is the country from where resettlement will become more more important. I think that it's good to stress that Bulgarian government signed up a common agreement with Greece and Turkey. It was, I believe, three months ago, which is really kind of a landmark for our efforts in this respect. Also, the readmission with Turkey is part of this picture and very important for Bulgaria. We have a problem which is very much related to integration. And if I had more time, I would have preferred to talk not so much about resettlement and relocation, but more about migration. More about integration of the migrants. And I think that the European Union could be more clever in setting up a framework which is not a straitjacket. It's really kind of a masterpiece how to do it. But for example, in Bulgaria, refugees coming from Syria, they have already kind of a diaspora which been for some decades in the country because of the educational reasons before. I mean, there is a tradition about this. So for our policy of integration, this is very important. I wouldn't take much of your time to talk about what are the features of in a country like Bulgaria, with still high unemployment, with the language which is not very popular, and you need really to make a plan for your life for the next, let's say, 10 or 20 years, and take a very, very difficult decision. What kind of health you can receive, what kind of education, what could you do with this language, how you are able to integrate or not so much. This is all pending and very important questions. We don't take integration policy like something which is just a matter of a good action plan, and that's it. This is much more beyond.
Thanks a lot. I would like to go back to the external aspect, though. Mrs. Kuneva just mentioned Syria. We have quite a number of refugees from Syria. Isn't this whole crisis also a result of our failing, us as the EU and its member states, our failing with, in Syria, for example, the problems in Iraq, and in general, how do we deal with this trade-off between security and embracing transitional countries in the south and in the east? How do we deal with countries like Tunisia or countries like Ukraine, where obviously people would leave not for the same reasons as others?
Well, that's exactly the core question, because Federica mentioned that we should not only focus on the consequences, because the fight against the smugglers, the readmission agreements, the integration process and programs, and so on, those are only, that is treating the consequences. What we need to do, and what we should have done much earlier, is to try and work with the countries, who are risk countries, in order to strengthen their institutions in a way that they assure better life for their own citizens. You can't stop exodus with guarding borders, but that is clear. Whatever you do, whatever smugglers whatever chains of smugglers you destroy, whatever strict control you put on your borders, whatever kind of mechanisms for readmission and cooperation with other countries you develop, if there's a critical number and mass of people who want to move, they will. And then it poses not only demographic problems and challenges, but also security challenges. Because we don't have to forget about the fact that with those people who are running away from the horror of the war, there will be others who will try to infiltrate and actually will be dangerous for the European security architecture in the future. We don't have to forget that another thing. There's a difference between refugees and illegal migrants on economic basis. We need to make this distinction for the sake of our citizens and treat the different categories differently. And focusing on those countries where the problems come from, here we need to actually allocate more resources. Before becoming a minister, I'm coming from the democracy development environment, democracy promotion environment. And I have to say, this is the way how we need to cooperate also with other countries, not only strengthening our relations in terms of security and defense and trying to pose barriers in front of the people in third countries, but also work with their governments so that they can create stable, responsible, transparent institutions which are capable of providing secure and viable environment so that the people who live in those countries are not motivated to move around for economic reasons or God forbid, because of war and conflicts. But that's what's happening. And this is not a phenomenon that has emerged yesterday. It has emerged a long time ago. And we were somehow resistant of recognizing it. And I'm very happy that now, under the leadership of Federica, we managed to put this question on the table very seriously in the European Council and start thinking about it. But it is a little bit already late. But anyway, better now than in a moment in which it becomes completely uncontrollable. So I am very much a defender of the idea that we need to work with countries of origin in order to strengthen rule of law, transparency, responsibility, everything which we know that brings results, because those people who come to Europe, they come because of the way the Europeans live, because of the conditions which the architecture of the society has created. They recognize, I mean, it's a natural way of recognizing where people feel good and where they don't. So that is a legitimate assumption on our side that we can actually promote that. We need to promote that. And we were doing it, but we somehow lost the confidence in it because very often when we're trying to do that, we're immediately accused of being neo-colonizers, or I don't know what else, imperialists, dirty capitalists, and I don't know what else. Well, that's what we need to fight as in terms of propaganda. But at the same time, we know this is good and we need to fight for it. We know that what we believe in for now has brought results. And all the people who come to us are a proof for that.
Thank you. My last question would have been about the Eastern Partnership countries and the limits to EU's leverage there, given that the policy is quite different. I mean, the enlargement light policy is quite different from what we have in the Western Balkans. But I'm not going to do that.